Hi, thanks so much for tuning in to the Drawing for Adults class today. This class is offered as a partnership between the Ann Arbor District Library and the Ann Arbor Art Center, and my name is Payton Cook, and I teach these classes at the Ann Arbor District Library. Unfortunately, we can't meet in person right now. I'm really thankful to be able to still offer this online virtual class. If you would like to share any of the art that you make today, please use the hashtag art@AADL so that I can easily find it on social media. I'd really love to see what you make. And today we're talking about patterns. What is a pattern? So a pattern is one of the many principles of design. There are several others, but a pattern specifically is a combination of elements or shapes repeated in a recurring and regular arrangement. This is a little different than rhythm, which is really similar. Rhythm is a combination of elements that are repeated but with variations. So with patterns, we see patterns that are man-made, meaning that we're making them as humans, versus patterns that are found in nature. So a natural pattern is when you see these visible regularities of form found in the natural world. So these patterns recur in different contexts and can sometimes be modeled mathematically even. So the Fibonacci sequence is found in nature, and there's a whole mathematical equation to it, but without going into that, I just want to share some examples of some plants where we can see that Fibonacci sequence. Now, we see other patterns as well in nature, so here's also some examples of those. Now, going back to other patterns that are not found in nature, there are a variety of artists that we can look to throughout history to find examples of patterns being created and used in art and design. And William Morris is a very well-known artist that did create a lot of patterns. And so we can see these really intricate, very detailed, but beautifully well done patterns. Navajo textiles would be another great example of patterns being used throughout the different cultures and just that significance of art and design throughout history. Gustav Klimt is a pretty well-known artist as well, and he created a variety of paintings that incorporate really small, intricate, almost mosaic-like patterns in his art, and they're just gorgeous. You can see so many colors. He also uses the use of gold and metallics in his artwork, which is also really interesting, but the patterns themselves are just beautiful. So Art Deco was a time period in art history from 1900 to 1945 where we see a really unique use of these bold and large patterns and designs, and it wasn't ornate like the styles that had come before, and so they're really funky. We can see a variety of different patterns that are kind of non-traditional. And then MC Escher, this is another great example of patterns being used, and he's creating these things called tessellations, which I would highly encourage you to look up more about those, but where he will turn and he'll do these really transformational looking patterns, and he's creating, it goes from a fish to a bird, for example, here. So, but he'll have this, repeating elements seen throughout several of his works. This is an example of more of a traditional styled tessellation. Andy Warhol also would be an artist that I would come up with when thinking of artists that have a sense of pattern in their work, because again, it's about that repetition, right? And so here we see in both of these images, we see the repetition of, in this one, people, right? So This would be a great example of repeating, but also with a little bit of rhythm even, because there are variations. Whereas these would be more of a traditional pattern because there's not really any variation, so it wouldn't have that sense of rhythm necessarily, but we do see the repetition. Now, Chris Jordan is a fantastic example of just a contemporary artist, meaning alive and making art today, of creating works of art that have a repetition aspect. And what he's doing is he's making a lot of art that has some kind of statement. So the one that's going right now, this is, so you can see it was 2,400,000 pieces of coal, which is equal to the estimated number of pounds of carbon dioxide being emitted into the Earth's atmosphere every second by the human burning of fossil fuels. So, and you can see here, each of these panels, which are 8 by 15 feet in 4 panels, there's a face, there's a figure in there. This one here is called Stone of the Sun, and it depicts 92,500 agricultural plant seeds, equal to 1/100th of 1% of the number of people in the world today who suffer from malnutrition. To illustrate the entire statistic, with 925 million seeds, would require 10,000 prints of this image, covering more than 8 football fields. This one he completed in 2015, and it depicts 78,000 plastic water bottles, equal to 1/10,000th of the estimated number of people in the world who lack access to safe drinking water. To show the entire statistic would require 10,000 prints of this image, which lined up side by side would stretch almost 10 miles. So you can see in this one and several others, he's using famous works of art to depict these statistics. So this one is Venus here, and this depicts 240,000 plastic bags, which is equal to the estimated number of plastic bags consumed around the world every 10 seconds. This piece you are probably familiar with, the original by Vincent van Gogh, The Starry Night, and this one depicts 50,000 cigarette lighters, equal to the estimated number of pieces of floating plastic in every square mile in the world's oceans. And there's so many more on his website, and so I would encourage you to look him up. Again, his name is Chris Jordan, and there are just so many really amazing works of art to be seen that have this just really, great impact, showing the statistics of different issues that we have and experience in this, in our world. Andy Goldsworthy is another contemporary artist, and he creates a variety of installation style artwork, and you can see his artwork often in different places in nature and in different museums, and he's using a lot of spirals specifically, and he's using natural elements such as stones and twigs and leaves. Yayoi Kusama is another contemporary artist that we can see making art today, and she has the use of the dot that is being repeated through many installations that she's done. She's done these infinity rooms with, it's just like dots on dots on dots, along with these pumpkins here. So really fun pieces. So here's an infinity room example. So I'm going to include a couple parts here of a video where you can see inside some of these infinity rooms that I'm referring to. So there was a infinity rooms exhibition, and so you can see here some of the lights that are being used, the just all the detail here. So I'm just going to take a minute and just scroll through some different contemporary artists that are making a variety of different art, whether that be, installation pieces or just fabric patterns, just all sorts of different designs. These are all contemporary artists that I'm showing now, and I don't know a whole lot about them, honestly, but you can at least see their work and seeing the variety of different media that they're using to still, of course, show patterns in their work, which I think is really neat to see. This is just an idea of how to start thinking about making a really unique pattern, right? When we think of patterns, it's so easy to get stuck on stripes and polka dots and zigzags and wavy lines and just coloring one stripe black, the next one white, the next one black, white, or triangle, circle, triangle, circle, triangle, circle. Really basic patterns. So it can be hard to come up with really unique ones. So I've created these templates here that I'm going to share with you, and I find these to be extremely helpful for just how to start. So I'd like to talk about that process a little bit, and it would be great if you could follow along. If you just have a pencil or paper, that will be great. So we're going to use basic shapes and lines to create really unique patterns. So I like to begin with a large grid pattern. So you could do a 3x3 or 4x4, whatever you want to do. Again, this is just a practice one. If you wanted to put this in a sketchbook, if you have it, that would be great. But this is just going to be a great template kind of base to use so that you can have an easier time coming up with unique patterns as you do a larger project today. So these are the two templates that I like to use that really help me when I'm trying to come up with unique patterns. So this first one here on the left, you can see I've just split each square into a diagonal split it with a diagonal line in each square. The other one on the right, it's a little wonky, so excuse the imperfect lines, but I have put a triangle shape inside towards the bottom part of each square. Okay, so this just gives me a way of breaking up each square into a more unique way. Okay, now obviously I could leave it like this. These are unique patterns, well, maybe not super unique actually, but they are patterns themselves, right? There's some kind of something being repeated, which is true. But from here, I would like to then think about how I could take, say, the upper right corner, upper right triangle, whatever, of each of the squares on the left template. And maybe I would fill that one with vertical stripes, for example. Okay. And then I just do that. I do that vertical stripe technique in every single one. Then on the bottom half, maybe I just fill it in solid, right? So now I've created a more unique pattern because I do this step and then I say, then what? And then I think about what kind of patterns, what kind of lines or shapes that I can add to that section. And then I think about, okay, I've done that, then what? So then I do that and I keep going until it's actually pretty full, okay? And you can also add shading. So I'll do some examples here. Okay, so in my first example here, I'm gonna make a 4x4 grid, and I'm going to go ahead and do those diagonal lines cutting through about halfway through each of them. After I have this diagonal template designed, what I want to do now is figure out what my next pattern, what my next design is going to be. So I've chosen a fish scale pattern to add on the upper left side of all of these squares. And I'm just going to repeat that design a couple of times. Then I'm adding a vertical line going from that middle diagonal line going down, and I think I'm going to make it kind of look like drippy paint or add some extra kind of detail once I have this done. And again, this is completely random. I don't really have a plan here as I'm adding this. I'm just thinking, okay, what can I add next? So now I'm going to add a little bit of shading behind the fish scales, and this is just something to give it a little extra dimension. I would encourage you to try different ways of doing this. I'm just keeping it really simple, and I'm only going to do a few just to give you an idea of what it would look like. I'll probably go back later and finish this, but for the sake of the video, I'll just keep it really short. So the next one I'm going to do is going to be the other template where I'm using the triangle. Now remember that that triangle can be placed at any position, doesn't just have to be at the bottom. So here I'm doing it more on the side. And from that, I'm adding this little teardrop shape onto the tip of that triangle. And then I'm turning it into kind of a bubble letter kind of design where I'm just adding an extra line going around that triangle and teardrop shape. So now I'm just going to add a vertical line that divides up that triangular shape, and I think I'm just going to fill that in solid black to keep it really simple, but also to add a more bold design. And then right beside it to the left, I'm going to add these little horizontal lines to give it a little bit more texture, just with that striped kind of element there to help give it more detail. Now I'm adding this oval shape with another line going around it to the lines, the horizontal lines in my template. So even though this video that you're watching is time-lapsed, obviously I'm not drawing that fast, this was a very slow process. This took me, I'm not really sure exactly how long, but a while to come up with just the decision-making process of, okay, what's going to be my next element that I add? What's going to be my next line, my next shape? Am I going to color it in with a more solid line, or am I going to keep it more simple? So this design specifically is becoming kind of a strange, random design here. So I'm just adding some extra little curls. I did forget to add the oval shape to the top and bottom of the section. And so now I'm just adding in, again, more lines here. And then I'm going to make this little loop more bold so that it's not just the left side of each square that has a bold design. I kind of like that, even though it's a little strange. For my next one, I'm just going to do a quick little small triangular shape here to show you an example of one that doesn't really use a template. So I'm going to start by adding simple stripes, again, just a simple pattern. And then I'm figuring out, okay, what can I do next? So I'm just going to add these little tick marks on each stripe. And then in between each of those stripes, I'm now adding little circles. Super simple, really quick and easy, great process. So hopefully that gives you some ideas before you start your own. So some other techniques that you can think about as you are going about this project is you can use really fun nature symbols or other random objects. Anything can be a pattern once it's repeated. Think about tiny leaves, tiny light bulbs, wheels, whatever you want. And then, like I mentioned, use your pencil to add some shading. It really makes it pop and come to life. And if you feel stuck, then again, think of a basic pattern. Maybe it's a checkerboard, for example. Do that pattern and then think of a way to add another pattern to your basic pattern. Do the checkerboard, but maybe you do every other one black, which is pretty standard for a checkerboard, but maybe the ones that would be white, maybe you add in little polka dots. Okay, so that would be how I would go about this approach to coming up with unique patterns. You think of something that's basic, you do that, and then you just keep going until it's pretty full. Here's some other fun examples of different patterns that maybe aren't exactly always very uniform, but they're very whimsical. You can use a ruler to create some of these, but also just a hand-drawn, simple imperfect drawing can be really fantastic to do for this. So I want you to make your own Zen Doodle. This is a really relaxing project that you, I think, will really enjoy, especially in these times where we're stuck at home with limited things to do, with a ton of stress, and just the overwhelming feeling of all of the unknowns. And so I think that you'll find this to be really relaxing, and just try to really embrace that and just relax while you're doing it. If you start to feel overwhelmed by all the details, just maybe come back to it later. But if you really relax into it and just enjoy the slow process, it can be a really fun thing to do. Maybe you can listen to an audiobook from the library while you do this, or some kind of background music. So I recommend coming up with a unique shape to put your patterns in. So this could be a radial design, for example. It doesn't have to be. You could draw a diamond shape on your sketchbook paper. However you want to draw it is fine. You can just fill up your whole page with doodles if you'd like. But then I would recommend dividing each section, or dividing up the shape into a variety of sections, whether it's kind of like this, where you make kind of like a wheel design, or you just do some other kind of unique pattern. So this could be this radial design, but like I said, it doesn't have to be that way. You can come up with so many different ways of dividing it up, but the idea is that each section will have a different unique pattern.